I'm certainly getting up to speed on the projects in town, and particularly this project. But Erica Tool and from Tool and her team have really helped me get going. The purpose of today's meeting is to talk about traffic calming projects in the Lynch School neighborhood. These are projects that will be taken on in conjunction or to complement the school rebuilding that's being done in the next 2 years. The idea is to provide some traffic calming in the neighborhoods and also to address safety and improve bicycle and pedestrian connections for the students who are attending the school. The spring town meeting allocated $400,000 for Tool to continue to develop our designs, to ultimately go out for bidding and construction. And the purpose of this meeting tonight is a follow-up to the October 2022 meeting that was had. I do want to point out that there was the meeting in last October presented some concept plans. Since then, Tool has begun to dig in a little deeper. They've done some survey. They've started to do sort of some reality checking on things, what work doesn't work, meeting with staff, incorporating some of the feedback that we've gotten from the last meeting. But tonight is not going to be a final or a very detailed discussion of the projects. It's mainly going to be an update of where we're at, what we found, how we've incorporated in our comments. And based on the feedback from tonight's meeting, Tool will evaluate some of the feedback and continue to design, start digging in and coming up with a more final design package. And then the plan is to come back to the neighborhoods in the spring with another update with more details, so that we can then pursue funding at Springtown meeting. We're working within a estimated budget of around $2.6 million. And that includes the work for the Pond Street side, which is what the focus of this meeting is, as well as the Horn Pond Brook side. Just want to note, you probably saw something that indicated that the meeting is being recorded. The recording and the slides will be posted on the town's website, and Erica will include the link at the end of the presentation. There's also a comment form on that website. We certainly want to hear your feedback today and get your comments, but if you're not able to attend, leave early, or just decide you have something you come up with after the fact, we'd appreciate you using the comment form, because it does help us organize the comments and answers. So with that, I'll pass it off to Erica Guidaboni, who's the project manager for the project with Tool Design. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And that was a great pronunciation of my last name. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. I have a fairly brief presentation just to orient everyone with the project. And then I'm hoping for most of this meeting to be an opportunity for public comment, feedback, questions before we kind of get started with the engineering design. So yeah, my name's Erica Guidaboni, and I have a couple of team members with me from Tool Design. I'm going to quickly breeze through some of these initial slides, as I think Matt kind of covered a lot of this stuff. As many of you know, there's a school construction project that is underway on the Lynch site. And I just want to remind folks that tonight we're talking about the off-site traffic related elements and not so much the on-site. While we can hear those today, those are not going to be part of the discussion this evening. Just a reminder on the project goals. Really the intention here is to improve safety and connectivity for people on foot, specifically students trying to access the school, and really focusing on people not only accessing the school by foot or getting dropped off and walking particular, maybe a segment of their journey, but also to encourage kids to be able to bike to school potentially. So these design plans are really in support of those kind of safety enhancements. Just a reminder of the timeline. There's quite a bit on this slide, but it takes a lot to get a big project like this built. And we want to make sure that we're letting you know about all the touch points along the way. And that we kind of aren't just jumping into this, as Matt kind of mentioned. We have, been to the group before last October. We did a full traffic study evaluation, finalized it right after meeting with everybody based on the comments that we heard. Then in Springtown meeting, it was kind of approved to fund these projects and keep us going forward. The engineering design was initiated over the summer. That included getting topographic land survey to kind of truth check all of the ideas that we came up with as part of the study. And then we're here tonight on the outreach component. Then moving forward, we're gonna, do our homework, roll up our sleeves and start kind of engineering some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today that's very conceptual, moving from that 30,000 foot view down to, we're at like 3,000 now and moving into like, the 30-foot view. We'll be back with you all. We haven't set a date yet, but in the spring of 2024 to say, did we hear and respond to everything that we talked to you about tonight? And then moving into final design, submitting a cost estimate to bring to town meeting in 2024. And then moving into construction, and the intention here is to have everything built before the Lynch opens in fall of 2025.
Hey guys, Bob here. Sorry if I interrupted anything.
Use him. If we can get him removed, thank you. So looking at the concepts, I think you've seen this slide before. I brought it a few times over the last year. But we have 12 kind of distinct projects around the Lynch School. I know this is the group that's on kind of the pond side of Lynch. We're going to focus on that side a little bit more, but I am going to show kind of all 12 projects this evening just to make sure you're oriented with all the different projects in the neighborhood. This is just a quick slide to show what we did over the summer and kind of what has happened since the last time I spoke with you all last October. And that's really just getting the land survey to truth test our ideas, make sure that they are constructible, feasible, that we can build them with the budget that we've kind of been provided. And we did like a site walk with the DPW, town engineer, town planner, to really kind of get our eyes into the weeds and focus in on the details of these projects. So I'm going to start on the pond side, and I'll focus a little more on the details on this side, and then move a little quickly through the Horn Pond Brook side. So this is pond side at Chesterford Road and Norfolk Road are both on the screen. The intention here is really curb extensions to narrow kind of the throat of the intersections for both of these. This will really slow vehicles down, turning from Pond Street onto the side streets and also coming from the side streets onto Pond Street. I know that there were concerns about the curb extension at Wildwood and Woodside. I want to let people know that we are going to be more thoughtful. We're going to be really careful about ensuring that we meet the day here and that we don't, make it tighter than what people are looking for. So we're working with, police and fire and ensuring that that we're allowing for, a very safe condition, no encroachment on the side streets. I'm curious if there's any feedback on the other one, but we will be really thoughtful about, providing auto turn movements, which is like vehicular turning envelopes to ensure that that this is safe, doesn't provide any encroachment here. But this can really shorten the crosswalks a lot on these side streets, which is really what we're trying to do, and to slow vehicles that are turning over those crosswalks. I know we got some feedback last time about the curb extensions going into Pond Street, and we actually removed that from the plan as we didn't want to impact the ability for people that are brave enough to ride on Pond Street to be able to continue to ride their bikes on Pond Street without having any curb extensions kind of impeding their ride. And then at the crossing with the rapid flashing beacon, we're looking at ways to improve sight lines kind of on that page, the top of the page there, where you're on the trail side, to, some selective trimming and improving the kind of curb ramp there, and also potentially putting in some curbing along the edge so that there's sort of a safe refuge for pedestrians. We also have these, I guess I should mention these little things here. These are hardened center lines, which is essentially like a little armadillo in the middle of the road. It's a fairly like low profile. And the thought here is that trucks could mount it, or, emergency vehicles, but that passenger cars would take a slower turn to make their way around these hardened center lines, rather than kind of that swooping turn across the lanes. So moving down Pond Street towards the school, pretty similar. I know that we've shown a few ideas at Woodside Road. So this is the curb extensions, which reduces again the the crossing length across the street. This is actually a pretty long crosswalk, so I think this is a really wonderful improvement for kids and people on foot. We'll be looking for opportunities to landscape where we can, potentially bring infrastructure if we think it's possible in some of these kind of curb extension areas. And then, same treatments as kind of the other two, and the same thing on Brantwood Road at the intersection. This is actually a rendering of kind of what that would look like. Helps to visualize what the project is kind of proposing. This is fairly similar across the board for those 4 intersections. And this one is specifically the Woodside Road intersection. Moving to the other side of the school, we've got potentially a raised intersection at Royal Street at Horn Pond Brook Road. This is to allow for the crossing guards to provide kind of that opportunity to hold the paddle up and have kids kind of cross in all directions. That's what we've seen. It provides pedestrian kind of priority by raising it to the level of the sidewalk. We're actually also talking about possibly putting stop signs on all approaches, and a pedestrian bridge to access the school as the building's going to be moving over here. And with the sidewalk over here, it's an opportunity to reduce conflicts between people walking and vehicles. Another rendering of what that will look like on the other side. Moving down to Royal Street at Sylvester Avenue. This is a location where we had raised crosswalks, but we're looking at flush crosswalks and then speed humps, and this is a constructability thing that we made that change. Moving down south on Middlesex Street, we're looking at a couple of raised crosswalks, some speed humps, and there's some gaps in the sidewalk here that we're going to be addressing, and a curb extension where there's a missing sidewalk and crosswalk as well. Moving down Middlesex Street, there's a missing sidewalk on both sides of the street as you get towards Lake Street. So filling those gaps as well and providing curb ramps where there are missing curb ramps. And with that, next steps, and Matt already said it, but the online form will be available for feedback if you think of something after this meeting or you want an opportunity to kind of digest it. Or if you have any neighbors that weren't able to make it tonight that you want to pass that along, we really are looking for feedback, and this isn't your final opportunity. The link is provided there. And as I said, next steps is engineering design over the winter. And we'll be coming back to you all in the spring with any, hopefully some of the comments that we've heard this evening address and an update on the engineering design. Thank you. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to ask that people raise their hands, and then we can unmute, and we'll go in the order that we receive them. Making sure that we have it so that you can't unmute yourself because someone has to be earlier. So I think we're good. Okay, Teresa.
Hi, so I sat in on the meeting for Horn Pond Brook earlier. So I got to see basically all but one slide from this presentation at that meeting. So that is disappointing, to say the least. The first question that I have is, at the last meeting a year ago, there were a lot of questions about trucks and speed on Pond Street. So first, in terms of truck prohibition, the last thing that I heard was that there would be some investigation as to whether trucks could be prohibited on Pond Street, and that would be coordinated with MassDOT. What is the status of that?
Yeah, so that comment was received and has been taken in, but unfortunately it's not particularly part of the scope of this project. We were talking about that a little bit earlier today as well. I know that people have concerns about speeds on Pond Street, but what we're really trying to do here today is ensure that people walking to the Lynch School have a safe means to walk. And right now, that's really an idea of reducing those crosswalk lengths across the side streets and reducing speeds across those crosswalks. Excuse me. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, well, I know that people are looking for that truck restriction, and I know that the town officials on the call today have heard that concern. That is not currently part of the scope of this project tonight.
Understood. I hear that. So I guess in terms of people traveling within the vicinity of Lynch School, so what you showed at Chesterford and Norfolk, whether you have individuals who are riding a bike to the school, to or from, as you said, if they're brave enough to ride on Pond Street. One thing that you showed was the armadillo to force a slower turn onto Pond Street or onto the side street. One concern is, again, relative to the speeds on Pond Street, is whenever you are forcing a much slower turn onto that side street or out of that side street, if the difference in speed between the turning traffic and oncoming traffic is so disparate, I would be very concerned about, as I have turned from Chesterford onto Pond Street, looking or attempting to see around that curve, which is extremely difficult. Cars come out of nowhere. And that's only going to get to be a harder decision to make that turn. It's going to become a riskier decision if I have to crawl onto Pond Street to actually make that maneuver. So one part of that is, visibility on Pond Street, and this should be an easy thing to address, is terrible. Going around the curves, it is terrible. At the multi-use path, you can, in one direction, you can hardly see the RFB. Further down the street at another curve, I know my neighbor has called DPW about getting that slope cleared. That never happened. So it's hard to even know where the fire hydrant is there. So there are existing issues and easy things that can get done. But whenever we're talking about speed, part of that is also making sure that it's safe for all users and ensuring that we are not forcing one user of the road to make a higher risk decision. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Erica.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead,
Before you
Matt.
take the next question, maybe you just want to add, I don't think you pointed out in the presentation, the additional speed feedback signs that were going to be placed on Pond Street.
Yeah, so that's actually something we talked about, and thank you for bringing that up, Matt. I guess I'd like to hear if that's something that people are interested in. I know that that's in the toolbox of the realm of possibility. So that is something that is in the potential for mitigation on Pond Street that is not that I did not mention today. So I'd like to hear feedback about that from people, please. Go ahead, John.
Hello, this is actually Michelle McSweeney. I'm John's wife. I live at 47 Pond Street, and my children are in the Lynch district. I just want to reiterate that I know it's not the part of the scope of the project, but the non-truck route issue is an issue for our street. You can reach out and touch a truck walking on the sidewalk. The other thing that I was wondering if would be considered, and maybe it's not in the scope, is possibly adding speed humps to Pond Street. I heard the city of Boston is installing 500 speed humps annually over the next 3 years. Route 38 in Medford has recently added speed humps. And then we also have the speed humps, I believe it's on Woodside. And I really do think that those have been effective. So I'm just wondering if that is on the table.
Thank you. I would say that we have thought about it, and it's technically the volumes on Pond Street start to become an issue there. It is an arterial, it is a route, but I did notice that since we've been here that Medford did it. So I think I would want to hear from the group if people find that interesting, if we could want to look at it a little more deeply. But my initial gut reaction was that vertical is challenging on a road such as Pond Street that has that regional connection. I would also add that it is the bus access route for the Lynch. So the school buses will be going over those, which can be fairly challenging. And without the truck restriction, you are in a situation where, you know, it is an arterial route that maybe isn't the best fit for vertical. But, you know, I'm open to looking more deeply and having those conversations if, you know, if that's something that people are kind of looking for. Go ahead, Tom.
Great, thank you for having me. My name is Tom Hopcroft. I am 99 Pond Street and also on the school committee. So I think the overwhelming issue on Pond Street is the speed, and I do think trucks are part of that. And I would request that you reconsider whether trucks are within the scope. Unlike cut through roads that go between Route 3 and Route 38 that are north and south of Pond Street. Pond Street only has a sidewalk on one side of the road. And so it's qualitatively different. It doesn't have as much visibility and doesn't have the pedestrian access. And so, you know, every resident who lives on the north side of Pond Street who has a child at the school has to cross Pond Street. And, you know, the traffic moves very, very quickly. And so, you know, I think that you know, the nature of the road is that it has become a cut through road. I've lived here since 2005, and the traffic has increased over time. When I lived here earlier on, it used to be a no heavy truck road. I actually have a photo of the sign on the Woburn side of the road, and I've seen around Arlington Street in Woburn, they've put no heavy truck signs all over the place, and they've popped up in other areas. So I do think it's returning it to its original state of no heavy trucks. But we also have the challenge of a lot of traffic that's not local traffic commuting through here. I don't know if Waze or other apps have caused that to happen so much. I recall in one of the prior presentations, I think that you guys did, there was a slide that talked about the increase in fatalities for every 10 miles an hour of increased speed. And so I think that there, you know, and I'm kind of curious also, I'm just going to throw out a bunch of stuff and then let you respond, but whether the 2.6 million enables you to do all of the proposed improvements here. But if you know, weighing improvements, there's a lot of need, there's a lot of missing sidewalk and crossings and kids on the other side of the school, and weighing that against, you know, sort of the increased likelihood of fatalities for kids crossing the street that can't walk on the other side and don't have the crosswalks to get across Pond Street. So again, on the scope, you know, it's great that the kids walking down Pond Street who are on the south side, you know, shortening those crosswalks, I highly support that. But I do think, you know, addressing speed overall and figuring out, you know, how kids can get across, you know, is very important. You know, I wanted to note on Brantwood coming out of the school, sorry, at the Pond intersection. It is incredibly difficult to make a left turn out of the school. You know, when you're coming out there, and traffic tends to back up. You know, part of this is because cars come off of Woodside so fast, and the prior speaker, you know, is right. It's kind of scary when you're pulling off of Chesterford or one of these roads and you're not doing it quickly because the traffic is moving so fast. But coming out of Brantwood, making a left turn, you're holding up all the people who are trying to make right turns. And I think that considering a turn lane, a left turn lane coming out of Brantwood, and frankly, a traffic light would be, you know, I think a good thing there to allow, at least during, it could be flashing yellow during other times of day, but at least when the kids are coming and going. I will note on the school bus issue with the speed humps, I do think speed humps are a great idea. The school buses currently drive Woodside between the ponds, and they're able to navigate those speed bumps. In fact, have a fourth grader who really enjoys standing in the back of the bus, going over any kind of bump. So I don't think that's you know, a huge issue. But yeah, so I mean, from my point of view, it's anything we can do to slow down the traffic on Pond Street is important. The narrowing of all these roads. You know, I will note the other end of Chesterford where it meets Woodside, which is I think outside the scope here. With the improvements that were done between the ponds, they cemented in a very wide crossing there. You know, the exact thing that you're trying to fix here by narrowing these and making them more optimized for pedestrian safety than high-speed traffic throughput. we missed that opportunity there. So we have a very long crossing that sort of winds there. And so, I applaud the work you're doing here. But I do think we have to think about how do we get kids from the other side of the street across this side of the street. I think you've done a good job with the proposal, but unless we can find a way to calm the traffic, slow it down, coming down the street and get those trucks, the trucks wouldn't be as big a deal if they were driving 25 miles an hour or less. But when you have an 18-wheeler go by you at 40 miles an hour and you're on that sidewalk that has no protection between you and the road, it's quite a we basically don't let our kids walk to school on their own, because of these crossings and because of the conditions. So anyway, I'll stop there. I could maybe I'll come back later, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Just back to your, just trying to remember your question from the beginning. Want to make sure I answer them. For the 2.6, we believe that we will be able to construct the whole host of projects that we've mentioned here. Although that, remains to be seen with like labor costs and accruing, gaining materials, and everything's kind of going up. So, we can't promise that right now. And as we do the final engineering, we'll get an updated cost estimate, which would probably be in the spring. We'll be able to come back and tell you if we're able to construct everything. I would love to put a sidewalk on the other side of Pond Street. I know we talked about this last time, and I certainly agree and completely understand that it's missing there, especially so close to a school. We actually have some like right-of-way challenges on Pond Street. You would think that typically like the town owns into someone's basically front yard and they don't really realize it. But I don't believe that the town has right-of-way that can build on that side. And there's a lot of really dramatic slope and grading challenges that will take place on that side of the street. So it would be cost prohibitive to try to put a sidewalk in on Pond Street, and we definitely would not be able to do really any other projects as part of this. But I'll get a better answer for you on that for next time, so that I can make sure that I'm answering your question. But from what we looked at initially, we would love to put a sidewalk in, and it's just not gonna be reasonable with the budget that we have here, and we'd be kind of weighing it against all the rest. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. Good evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I'm also a resident on Pond Street, and I first of all wanted to say thank you to you for taking all the consideration or all the comments into consideration that we've provided at the last meeting. I think there have been some really significant improvements to this planning, which is great to see. I'm really excited about the green infrastructure components that you've mentioned. It's really fantastic. Some of the other commenters have noted the difficulty of being able to cross. I'm not going to repeat everybody else's comments, but I really do also feel strongly about the ability to turn onto Pond Street from some of these side roads. The other thing that's important to note is that on Chesterford Road, there really is just also just one side of the road that has a sidewalk that leads up to Pond Street. So the sidewalk that's on the Woburn side is the one that's existent, and then on the other side there isn't any sidewalk. So that, to me, creates another challenge for children going to school, meaning they would have to cross the road at Chesterford before the sidewalk ends. And that sometimes also is another road where folks drive very fast. And it's tricky because I think people speed up significantly on that road as well. I know that so just another thought to keep in mind as you're thinking through the engineering and the design there. And so that's something I think that would also just improve some of these plans, is being able to put sidewalks on both of those sides. The thing is that the Chesterford side does have a sidewalk on both sides for up to a point, and it just ends. So I'm sure you can see that when you look on Google Maps or whatever plans you have. So another thing that I wanted to mention in response to what you mentioned about Medford with the speed humps on Route 38, that is near a school. Presumably there is a school bus that would have to go over those speed humps. So I don't see why that would be an issue on Pond Street. I do know that it's, like you said, it's a connector. So is Route 38. I would almost argue that Route 38 might be busier than Pond Street, but I'm just going off of my own gut here. I don't have data to back that up. And then finally, I think then you just mentioned the point about the right of way. I know for a fact that one of our neighbors has a retaining wall that is owned by the town on the other side of Pond Street that doesn't currently have a sidewalk. So but I'm sure, I'm not gonna take the stand of the town here. I'm just pointing that out for reference and conversation. But those are the things that I wanted to mention. I think, obviously speed's an issue. And so that would be great if some of those speed bump considerations could be continued. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I'm gonna, Tom, I see your hands up, but I'm gonna shift to Eric just to make sure that everyone's got a chance to at least speak once, and then we'll get to you. Go ahead, Eric. Eric, you there? All right, I want to shift to Dylan.
Hi, so I live on 25 Chesterford Road. So basically, it's basically at the crossing of Chesterford Road and Pond Street. And so I would like to echo, I think many people have already raised this. The cars and trucks really do drive at very high speed on Pond Street. And part of the problem, we noticed two problems. One is that many cars actually don't stop even when the lights are on for the pedestrian crossing on Pond Street. That pedestrian crossing going into the Horn Pond Park, many cars don't stop and they just zip by really, really fast. So I really echo what everybody's talking about. Safety on Pond Street. Speed is really a concern. The other thing with regards to the speed on Pond Street is that specifically to Chesterford Road, when cars on Pond Street turn into Chesterford Road, they come in at very high speed as well. They don't slow down. They just make a left turn onto Pond Street. And that creates a problem because kids could be crossing the street or on the street or whatever, and there seems to be a blind spot for cars coming from Pond Street into Chesterford Road. Because I do that sometimes too, and it's a blind spot. So I don't know if you guys have tried it or tested it or not, but there is in my experience, a blind spot between Pond Street going into Chesterford Road. And what's the bigger concern, what adds to the concern is that Chesterford Road has, this part of Chesterford Road has only one side of sidewalk on the side of my house, but not on the other side. So I don't know, that's another issue as well. It's not safe for kids going to school because then they have to they were on one side and they have to cross onto the other side, and then, buses or cars or trucks could actually go from Pond Street into Chesterford Road. That just, creates an unsafe situation. So those are sort of my concern with this. I mean, I was not at the last meeting, so I don't know. Maybe you've already thought about it, or you already, had some plans on it about this. But if that's the case, I'd be happy to hear what you have.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think we recognizing that we can't design for people that are not, paying attention or, not going to respect things. But the rapid flashing beacon is a really wonderful tool that you have there that allows for sightlines to be sufficient at the crosswalk. But we are hoping to improve visibility with some, vegetation removal and enhancing the kind of the safety of pedestrian waiting here so that they can be more visible and not kind of be back in the trees. You could be a little more comfortable getting a little closer and pressing the button with the curb and the ramp reveal there. And then, we're talking about the speed feedback signs, but which, I imagine, people would be at least interested in. I know that they are not a solve all thing. But they do tend to reduce speeds on average by about 3 miles per hour, which, every little bit does make a difference. In terms of the Chesterford Road thing, I've heard from a few people, that challenge of that sight line there. There is a curve in the road there. And you are right, there is some line restrictions, if you're pulling out of Chesterford looking left. There is a wall, and there is a tree, and we could have, those conversations, but I think, to the extent possible, we want to design around, that change with these curb extensions and try to not impact, private property as best we can. So making it a little safer, kind of edging it out to get around those things. We'll look a little more closely if we can do a little bit more of that to address that concern. Thank you, Dylan. I'm going to go to Chris.
Hi, Chris O'Connor. I'm at 160 Pond Street, so just out of frame on this picture, on the side without a sidewalk. And again, I do really appreciate the work being done to narrow some of the intersections here, but I do want to echo what a lot of the people are saying about the speeds on Pond Street. Again, I don't have a sidewalk on any part of mine or my neighbors. So say to get to the park, I have to cross the street. And it is, people fly down the street. And again, with the rapid flashing, I see people go through that all the time. It's tricky. So to me, there's always going to be people who have to cross the street because of the way the sidewalks are, and to not sort of mitigate that speed in some meaningful way seems like we're really missing one of the biggest risks on the street. And again, it's great we're going to trim back because I think visibility at that park and everything is like really, really rough, and that's acknowledged. That's great. But again, the speeds coming around that corner are gonna still be a problem. It's tough when people take the road, the turns fast, and like I've seen that, and this should mitigate a lot of that. But the through traffic really is a fairly significant problem all the time on that street. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's try Eric again. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to fix my microphone. So yes, Eric Scher, I'm at 94 Pond Street, the north side of the road, without a sidewalk as well. I just wanted to, so I raised my hand after the discussion of sidewalks on that side. If sidewalks on that side are cost prohibitive, I was thinking maybe a sort of way to narrow the road with like a bump out or a chicane as an option, um, just on the straightaways. So like one or two of them, just to force people to maybe think about how fast they're going and where they're positioned in the lane. Because the roads are straightaways. They're rather wide at several areas, including the area between 1 and 2 on your diagram there. So anywhere there's a big straightaway that just passed a corner where you could see in front of you, people tend to accelerate. And I hear it all the time on both sides of where I'm at because I'm in the middle of a straightaway. So after they cross a curve, they can see everything in front of them. They just zoom up as quickly as possible. So, obviously one of the options there is a speed bump sort of in the middle. But I think a chicane or a bump out from the top side of that or the north side of that road. And I know traditionally chicanes have been maintained by the homeowner for homeowners that the chicane is sort of in front of. That to me, if you put a chicane in front of my house, I'd be happy to maintain that. It narrows the distance I would have to do to cross the street, first of all. And you can even have like an area open for a bike that goes behind it. But again, I'd be happy to do that to ensure the safety of my daughter, who's going to be probably going to Lynch when it's built, just on time. So that is, again, echoing everyone else's comments on the speed and the trucks. I think just adding that sort of maneuverability to slow people down on kind of like on a force where the road narrows instead of it having to be that wide, broad open straightaway. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your you're volunteering to maintain it. We had a person on the last call offering to install the speed humps. So appreciate that. I would just say, Eric, that and it's an interesting point you're bringing up of kind of allowing bikes to go behind the chicane potentially, because we pulled back on kind of building into Pond Street and because people like to, you know, ride to Horn Pond and the recreational areas there and get on the tri-community path. And while we don't quite have the width to actually put in bike lanes on Pond Street. People said that the shoulders are, you know, bike friendly, and they, you know, for those that are kind of brave enough, as I said before, and we would be kind of impeding that ability for people to kind of stay along the curb if we change the curb line there. So we're going to be kind of struggling between those two interests when we start talking about kind of choke points and narrowing with chicanes and things like that on Pond Street. So I don't have a great answer for you on that, but that's kind of where, you know, why we pulled back on that. We kind of have to navigate the interests of all kind of neighbors when address this. All right, I think Tom, we can go back to you.
All right, am I back?
You are.
Thank you. Sorry, I went on mute really quickly and and I shouldn't have done that because I couldn't get back off while you were talking. I wasn't meaning to suggest adding a sidewalk on the north side. I was just pointing out that since we don't have one and it doesn't seem feasible here, we need to make it safe to cross the road. And that, you know, we've heard overwhelmingly on this call that speed is such a factor. You've presented before about how many more fatalities there are for every 10 miles an hour. And we have these large trucks. So I think really, you know, my emphasis, you know, is to think about, well, what can we do to slow people down? You know, when I look at the, you know, the Chesterford or the crossing to Horn Pond by Chesterford, making that a raised crosswalk, maybe that would help. I know on that corner right there and on the corner further up past you know, towards Cambridge Street, the cars go so fast they can't stay on their side of the lane. You know, they go right over the yellow lines as they go around those corners. If you stand by Horn Pond crossing and watch the cars fly through, not stopping for the flashing lights, and I get that you can't force people to stop for the flashing lights, but if you could get them to stay in their lane, that would help. And so I wonder if sticking some of those armadillos on the center line on these curves, that would make it really uncomfortable for cars to, you know, it would force cars, it would effectively narrow the lane because they're using both lanes when they go around the corner. If there isn't a car coming the other way, you know, that might be able to help there. And I did want to echo what people said about the top of Chesterford, the sidewalk. It's only missing for 2 houses, and then it starts up. I know it's really narrow there, but even if there was, you know, a 2 foot, then you probably can't put in a 2 foot wide sidewalk 'cause it's not ADA compliant. But if there's any way to put something there, because it is really hard. Every now and then someone, you know, walks along there and you see cars fly around that corner. But I think overall, you know, I think the prior speakers comments about having the chicanes or whatever they are, you know, shifting the road, you know, here and there, or just having choke points or you know, speed humps or you know, putting those armadillos in the middle on the corners. You know, it's anything you can do to slow it down. And I did want to lastly say on the trucks I see go by, I mean, I see like Coca-Cola trucks and CVS trucks and trucks with brand names I've never heard of before, driving down the road. And you know, there's no reason that the CVS truck couldn't, you know, just take the next exit off of 128 when they're headed down to CVS on Main Street, or take the turn at Four Corners where the roads are significantly wider. I think this is just a shortcut, and it's increased a lot over time, and it's how it used to be. So I do encourage you to, you know, I'm really thinking with the lens of pedestrian safety, and so, you know, we know there isn't a sidewalk on the other side. We know that half of the residents of the street have to cross the street to get anywhere. And so how do we make that safe? And I think it has to be finding a way to slow the traffic down, or reduce the volume of traffic. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I would just say, I really appreciate people's comments this evening, and even if they're repeats, that's actually a good thing, because that just kind of hits home that, you know, people have similar comments, so I appreciate that. And that we're maybe on the right track, or we have more work to do. in terms of the, I guess the toolbox that we're looking at for traffic calming on Pond Street, something that, my team were actually talking about was, call it a hardened center line. It's like flexi posts, that you've seen that like trucks can technically run over if there was an emergency or anything like that. But kind of visually narrow the lanes by having a vertical element on both sides. So something we talked about was a hardened center line, maybe even just approaching that crosswalk, which just feels like a critical safety area. And maybe there's other kind of curves in the road that we would do something like that, but we could potentially do some hardened center line flex posts along the center line on Pond Street in some key areas as a kind of opportunity to potentially reduce speeds. It would reduce the ability for vehicles to kind of go so fast that they're kind of sliding into the other lane, especially on curves. And it would be a cheaper option than like full construction. It could be a good way to kind of test some ideas without impacting the ability for people to ride on the shoulders. So that's something we can potentially look at as well if that's of interest, and bring something back to the next one. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something here. Because I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not sure. The green thing that you show here on Chesterford Road, what is that? Yeah, this part, yeah.
Yeah, that would be so that's part of the curb extension, which this is totally a concept, just a cartoon drawing, and what I would say it's maybe a little more refined than that. But what the intention is here is we're trying to tighten Chesterford Road a little bit to shorten the crosswalk there. This one's going to be tricky because there's a driveway at 25 that we need to make sure we're considering and providing access for.
Yeah, it's my house, so I'm wondering.
Great. We were out there and we were like, we got to talk to number 25. So we want to talk to you and make sure that we're being thoughtful about your driveway access and anything we do right in front of your property, given that it's
I have
going
a driveway there, so I'm not sure what you're doing there.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we can we'll be reaching out. Maybe we can put a flyer on your door with our contact information or something. We can have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I found you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I definitely like the idea of hardened center lines, anything that kind of narrows the space that drivers can proceed through, that just gives them that subtle cue to take their foot off the accelerator. So that whether that's something along the center line, the flexi post, speed reduction markings may also be a consideration. I know that's, a different type of maintenance over the years. But again, just to kind of the sort of thing that will help people realize how fast they're going, and would certainly help, at this curve with the RFBs, and elsewhere on Pond Street as well, because it is, the houses are close to the road. We can hear the trucks flying by, and yeah, as Tom said, it wouldn't be so bad to have those trucks if they were going 25, but I think, if I remember correctly, the 85th percentile speed was like 37, which is, if I'm remembering that correctly, that may have been average, which is considerably higher and makes a big difference. So anything to kind of give drivers the cue to slow down will make it safer for everyone along the road. So definitely appreciate those ideas.
Thank you, Teresa. I actually asked Taylor while we were on the line what the speeds were on Pond, and we had an average of, depending on the direction, 32 to 33, and then the 85th was 36. And I believe when we got the data a year ago, it was signed at 30 and has been reduced to 25. So with that 25, I don't have updated data to say that people are complying, but I imagine that, from what I'm hearing tonight, they probably are. I don't see any more hands raised, so I think we can shift gears and close up the meeting. If you want to bring us to the end, Matt.
Sure. I want to thank everyone for attending the meeting and for providing feedback. Definitely hearing speed is still a concern. for the neighborhood, and perhaps there's some more homework for us to do on that. From a more personal standpoint, from some of the discussion, particularly as it related to the speed humps in Medford, I think I share Erica's sort of surprise that they were put in, because I think all of the engineering standards that I've seen would suggest you wouldn't put them in, and I think that gives us pause to maybe reevaluate what our approach is, or whether it would work here, while also being respective of the budget that we've set in the other projects we've committed to. So I do think that that's something that the team will take back, based on some, not just this idea of the speed humps, but other ideas that have been floated at the meeting to discuss further. In the meantime, I do encourage you, if you have additional comments that you didn't get to say, or additional questions that come up after the meeting, please use the comment form that's on the website. That's at the Lynch School Traffic Improvements off the town's website. This meeting was recorded and will be posted there, as will the slides. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.